What's up, everyone? Carmen here with Pittsburgh White Shorts. I'm joined today by Andy.
What up, what up?
And today I wanted to go over 8-plant slime. I'm bringing Andy along with the ride. Andy knows the old deck, knows a little bit of the new deck, but I thought he would bring a good perspective of how slime's running it now. Still around, literally was a meta contender when it came out, and it has quite literally never left the English meta. It has always been around. Probably will always be around, honestly. Set's super solid. Also want to go over, kind of near the end, kind of my BCS experience, sort of like what I saw. I unfortunately can't attend any more regionals this season, and a lot of the other Pittsburgh crew are busy with One Piece stuff. So BCS singles for us and with Pittsburgh is probably over. Nothing bad, just life stuff. Things are busy this fall. So unfortunate. I was able to at least snag that one top in there. Zach also did very well, came in right in on the top 8 Toronto. Then I was also in Chicago the past weekend. I want to talk about that a little bit at the end, maybe touch on slime. It's very relevant. Deck has very high conversion that maybe people didn't expect. I want to touch on that later, but let's start with the deck. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Lay it all out.
Is this the list that you
yes.
you top with? Is this your?
Yes,
okay.
I did not change the list between Toronto and Chicago. I am I tweeted about this before. I have never been more confident in 50 exact cards, my exact 50 cards, for at least this like current meta, like the way I decided to build it. There's a lot of ways to actually take this list. The list is a lot more flexible than it might seem, because the deck plays really well on very thin counts of cards. You can really shave things down and not see a lot of hurt, but you're playing both of these events were 8 rounds into top cut. There's still a lot of consistency required for a long event, so let's just hop right into it.
I was gonna say that's always been Slime's bread and butter, was
just the consistency.
over everything else.
Yeah, and you'll notice we're not running mask or anything anymore. We will
oh dang, we're not.
Yeah, no mask.
So your Shizus don't even go to memory?
They do, you just don't care anymore. Mostly because the 2/1 Murin is so powerful, but we'll get to that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Let's get in here card by card. So I am personally playing the Hakro and Shuna package. It is usually either this or the Milam Chaser and the Ricky, which were a lot more popular with the previous build, the memory focused build. This Hakro is just you can't play events or backups, doesn't matter. And then when you get a reverse with him, you can card remove the character from the field. You kick it to their stock and then kick their bottom card. So this denies literally like everything in Hololive. Everything Hololive is playing, any on death Ricky, any on death effect, and he's 3,500, so he at least ties. But ideally, going second, you want to play him alongside the Shuna. The Shuna is a pay 1, punch yourself, check top 2, add 2 characters Ricky. So good drop going second, good drop going first, and then when you attack, you can bump one of your other characters 1,500 power. 1,500 power is a lot for like just a plussing card that you want to puke in the early game. Puts you at good numbers like later in the game, can win you a single lane against Alice with your Murin on attack over literally any counter barring the Leafa not being on board. And of course at level 0 you make a 5k Hakuro, which then kicks their Laplace/Aqua. You see where I'm going with this? Like, this lets you puke your hand in the early game aggressively, like the meta kind of dictates that you must a lot of the time, especially in matchups against Alice. You really want to develop like a damage advantage, so they can't just sit there and grind out the game. You have to like continue to like force them to play and at least burn resources to manage their deck state, because they can't like afford to sit there and eat damage, things like that. You definitely want to like beat over people's cards at 0, deny effects when possible, and this just gives you everything all in one. With the lineup that I was playing in this deck, you have 9 to 10 comfortable drops going first, which was my preference for how to play the list, and then going second, just try field every single time with this lineup, which is very nice. But the other way you can play it, I'll talk about when we get to the other cards, other things that people have definitely been playing. There's a lot of weakness, but I think this, for the current meta with everything that is kicking on reverse and on death, the Hakuro plus Shuna is a no-brainer.
Yeah, it feels very targeted, because Slime has no deficit of good level 0s that you could be playing. Center runners, multiple Rickies. I mean, they have a pretty premium level 0 lineup, I'd say. The bonder to the mask. So playing the Shuna, that's like a no-brainer. You'd include in most slime lists, it seems. But the Hakuro is very targeted. Specifically, I can tell for dealing with Hololive, in dealing with just all the like on-death effects that you have at level 0, the on-death Rickies, on-death stuff that might go to memory. The fact that it's a big beefy body that holds field while also like keeping up tempo and denying their advantage at level 0 seems pretty good. And I can see why, if you're making the concession for the Hakuro, it's definitely tough to fit the masks in, because he's a big card that probably will be sticking around. So you don't want to hit level 1 with him on your field and not be able to play your mask.
Yeah, he's like, it's never really been that sort of an issue there. It's mostly just you really want to deny people stuff when possible. I think that it is like an underrated thing to deny people stuff, because it usually comes at the like the opportunity cost of you not doing your game plan as well. But in Slime here, it's basically free, as well as like no other build that, unless you're playing something like this, try fields as easily for Slime. Slime really, like, the only time you would try field is like on your second turn, if you were playing the Kaijin, the like loner that was popularized in the last list, just a 4500 level 1 when he's alone or something like that, and he was a 3k otherwise. This sort of fulfills a similar strategy while also being disruptive. So moving on, the rest of the level 0s are going to be tech pieces, filter cards. The Veldora here is kind of our 9th opener, as well as a graveyard access card. We are now like a pure search deck. Our brainstorm searches, our combos are searching. Our level 1 combo salvages, but for the most part, we need to have graveyard access cards as our filter. So Veldora is notably green, only green card in the deck. Green's a new color for Slime, doesn't really matter. 5 or more cards in hand, 35, and then you can sack him and ditch a card to salvage character. Lets you loop stuff at the top, loop your Melim burns, or obviously just toolbox you for anything in your grave. If you rip this card out of deck, he represents any card in your grave, because you're going to be plussing so hard. A lot of the time, you're going to be overhanded in the turn just because you want to rip cards out of deck with Murin. You're going to have the ability to use that sack salvage and not feel bad about it. And then 2 of the Cheaty Rimuru, mostly that is there also for color, and because you are just 8 pants. Double filter on 1 card. This card's like always been like a completely insane like auto pickup when you mill 0 on your cigarettes and you have no idea what grab. Really flexes you on the next turn really well, just being like a 2-card ditch, as well as being like selective salvage when you trigger a bazillion pants and you need to get rid of them.
Yeah, both these cards seem like absolute bangers in 8 pants when you're flooding on the climaxes. And again, since you're compressing so hard with the Muron onto, on your second, third, fourth deck, being able to clean those climaxes out of your hand, get them going back to waiting room and then shuffling back, seems pretty valuable.
Yep, just some really strong grave-based filter card. Rounding out the rest of the 0, obviously we're playing the level 0 stock swaps, one of the main reasons to be playing Slime, especially in this meta. I'll get into that later. And then 2 new cards. One of them, the Benimaru, is just a climax swap and it has on-play Surveil. The Surveil's actually pretty important in the end game. We have multiple cards that rely on top checks, either to burn or burn for an amount. So being able to move a card, specifically if it's a climax, your other card that peaks top can only rearrange cards. This could dunk 1/2 grave, even though it would be slightly more optimal to play the blue climax swap for color. We're playing this for that reason. Then when we'll just level a level 1 combo or level a Murin or something like that, it's really honestly fine. The blue, levelable blue really never comes up, as long as you're willing to just throw those combos and level, it'll work out, I promise. And then last year, a new card is this Melim, so you can pay 1 sacker to check 4, and then you can also on play put a card from hand to stock. So this is the same card economy of playing over a Chiuri while also giving you the ability to randomly hand to stock later. So it's very flexible as a like 1 card deck speed patch, while also giving you the ability to randomly in the end game convert extra cards in hand into a 1 card in stock, which has come up because you get like pretty lean up at the end game, sometimes pushing 1 extra Melim ping or something like that you can get off this is really impactful and wins you games. So the fact that this card does kind of like double duty, or honestly triple duty, you can finesse this card like a lot, just to get that out of here. And again, like I was saying with the Veldora, sometimes with Murin at level 2, you are ripping so many cards out because ripping cards out has value for compression, not just plussing. So sometimes you are making plays to go overhand. So the fact that this like negs you 1 to move cards doesn't really matter too much in the late game. And in the early game, if if you got a mill, you got a mill. So we take those.
Yeah, I like the way you put it too about it's kind of like playing over a Chiuri. That's an interesting way to look at it for like the same card economy. But yeah, it seems like all three of these cards are like very good toolboxy options. Muron giving you really good card selection. Being able to just like on demand pick whichever one of these silver bullets out of your deck is going to be most relevant. The two Melums especially seem like really good silver bullets. Obviously the stock swap, but the ability to just like, again, if you're going overhand, you know, that way you're not over plussing, you can, you know, get some advantage off that card you would otherwise be discarding is really nice.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the toolbox aspect of the deck is a big reason I and many other people are deciding to play. Moving on here, this is kind of like a combined slide. Last level 0 as well as a very important other card. These cards work together and they're a cornerstone of the deck. The Murin is your brainstorm. It is a self-tap search brainstorm. We typically don't like those, but this one has a really good reason to play it because when you have the Shuna on the board, the Murin gives your whole board 1,000 power. And when the Murin is on the board, when the Shuna down, there's another 1,000 power, and every other card on the board becomes hexproof. Your entire board is hexproof. Full board Armin for the cost of 1 stock and 2 cards, and they're an assist and a brainstorm. They're both good cards to have sitting back there anyway. It's as nuts as it sounds. The timing on this is actually really good now that Overlord is out because you only need a single Shuna down to deny a single Eins with markers. They can only target the Shuna because they must choose all characters simultaneously. Only the Shuna will be sent to grave and then you can play the Shuna. Or if you're a madman, you can have double Shuna down and they can't target anything. And you might be able to even win a lane against one of the Eins with a backup, which is pretty cool against Overlord, but you push so much damage in this deck by like slamming Climax turn after turn with the pants. Overlord is typically pretty behind in that matchup anyway. But yeah, this is a really insane package that just gives you a lot of benefits. Well, you know, obviously putting your Murins at 12-5, 13-5 with Climax down on attack, backing up to pretty insane numbers, cleanly defensively being over a swinging in Alice at 12, which is very nice. Just sitting there is a nice power threshold to be at, as well as the hexproof, just, you know, making any early plays you have down immune to anti-change counter, you're immune to tap, immune to stuff like money counter, like all that stuff.
Yeah, and I guess like what you were talking about earlier too, I mean, you only really need one of each of these down and then you're set. So this, you know, any extra copy of this level 0 brainstorm is like really good levelable blue.
Yep, same with the Shuna for red too. You only ever really need one unless you're in a matchup that demands you have 2. That's usually only SDS and Overlord, the matchups where you want to play for that. SDS so that they can't like go for a double bounce line because a single Escanor is still pretty scary. And then Overlord, obviously, if you want to go for that total denial, 1's usually good enough. Level 1's here where you're still playing the Shizu combo. This is like kind of the money gate, keeping a lot of people off this deck probably. Maybe they'll reprint Slime again so people can get their hands on this card because it's just a pretty decently good card. It is an on attack cigarettes combo. You mill 2, you salvage a level extra lower where X is the combined level of the cards you mill. You play a lot of level 1 and higher in the deck, and even when you hit 0, we just went over how a lot of those cards just flex into the card you want on the next turn. So the fact that you're playing so many 1-ofs, you can easily pick up 1s and lower with this. You can pretty much always have your 1 and lower tech cards going into your level 2, which is really important. Not only is this good at picking up your level 2 and stuff because you're playing so many 2 and higher, because you're playing that inflated 2 and higher count, because you're playing a 4 of 2-1 combo, you can also just pick up cards that help you answer specific matchups, specifically Alice with a card on the following slide. This Gobta is your answer to the Alice matchup. The Alice matchup is still relatively unfavored. It's like at worst 40-60. It depends on their build. If they're like an absolute madman like Brandon from the Clock Tower, shout out to him. I played him in Chicago. He was playing double Lifa. He canceled the builds in times anyway, so it doesn't really matter what he was playing. But he put that Lifa down, which prevented me from ever being able to win the board and ran 2. With long as the Lifa doesn't hit the board, this Gobta is your out to Alice. And the way it works is you play down 2 Murin, play down the Gobta, buff 1, attack with the Gobta, buff the other. Your full board's hexproof. Your cards aren't early plays anyway, so they're not susceptible to counters or anything weird like that. This will put both your Murins cleanly over the 3k counter, and there's nothing they can do provided they don't already have the Lifa down, and they will lose 2 Alices. If your Alice opponent burns their sculpts on backups and they're not familiar in the matchup, this card can be a blowout win. Otherwise, it's just really good against player who already knows what's up. And then obviously playing Mirren, we're playing the other Mirren support card here. This card is basically Miko. It is a 6K and has Clock Encore, selective Clock Encore from grave. Helps set your colors. Reminder that we have to hit our 3 color experience for our finishers. We must hit yellow, blue, and red over the course of the game. And we just discard any character and we could just rip Mirrens out of deck. So if we don't have all our Mirrens and we only hit a 1 on our Shizu Climax combo, we can actually just pick up this, wait for our refresh, and then grab our Mirrens and play our Mirrens at the top of the next deck. So this is like a way to turn a Cigarettes for 1 into a Mirren, if you can pick this card up. As well as this card, just like, you know, you don't have a lot going on at level 1, and your Shizus send themselves to memory a lot of the time, so you can't really replay them. So if you get stuck at 1, a lot of the time it's better for you to do the Kanatamarine play and play a card over your Clock Encore and just punch yourself up to 2. So
I guess my question with that card is, it just seems like where's the room for it? and by that I mean, like, you know, when you hit level 1, you want to be like playing triple level 1 combo Shizu, and you know, when you hit level 2, you want to have your Brainstorm and your Assist in the back row and your triple Miruns in the front, so you have like your god board that's, you know, completely filled.
You definitely can.
Where do you play this card down?
When you play this card on the turn to find your Mirren, it only stays on the board if you don't have triple, which is fairly rare that you don't have triple. Triple Mirren's the easy part. Playing triple Shizu is actually incredibly difficult in this deck. I should have mentioned that on this slide, and it's good that you brought that up. You do not play for like triple every game anymore. I know that's like the marker of Slime, because they would play the Mask, they would play the Ricky, they would pretty much always triple Shizu. Because you have the Shuna giving you that +2 in the early game, and because you have this card, which is not only a plussing card if you really need it, but also a card that sculpts for your Mirren, which is infinitely more important than your Shizu, you will happily do like double Shizu one of this card, and that's much better because it actually just sculpts you into or 2-1 combo, which is much more important. Does that make sense? You're just like not playing for triple as hard as you used to.
It's more important to set up for triple Muron than triple Shizu.
Yes, 100%.
So you can play this down comfortably at level 1, set up your help set up Shizu, or set up, oh my god, help set up Muron for next turn. Yeah, I can see that. And I think you're, like, hearing you explain that, I think your count of 2 is probably good. Like, again, when the game's going good, you might not need this card, but like, you still want it to be like accessible. Like, so I think 2 of is like good for when you need to pick it up. Like,
2
you're not
also,
gonna clog on it, but you're not gonna like never see it.
2 also opens up the line that you otherwise wouldn't get with only 1, which is playing itself over itself, that you can clock yourself infinitely to the next level if need be. It's sometimes relevant in these decks that can go all in playing for board, but the best part of Slime is you kind of do a hybrid of both. Playing a 1k1 deck and you're not too all in on board, you love to win board, but you don't really have to because the Mirren's so good. So getting into the Mirren is a 2/1 55. If you have 2 or more other Demon Continent characters at least, this card's 10/5 by itself. You got the full back row going on. This card's 12/5. It's hexproof with the Climax down 13/5. Very good numbers. When you play the Climax, as long as you have a full board, search your deck for a character, put it in your hand, then grab a character from your waiting room and put it into your stock. So this card is like perfect selection. We have plenty of cards we can search from deck that give us cards in our grave. We are ripping cards out of our active deck. So we're doing what Sal did back in the day, but on a scale that is consistent with the modern metagame with stuff like Yuki, ripping cards out of your current deck. That is always going to be a powerful compression strategy. And it's actually just as good, if not better, than like the memory strategy to go all in on this. Because if you think about it, you like instantly rip cards out of your active deck, which is like playing 3 masks for the cost of like slamming a Climax. You ripped a Muron out on the turn with the Bonder. That's like another card you ripped out of the deck. You're like actively ripping cards out on that turn. As well as, you know, this card is incredibly selective. It's a like fair version of Alice because it doesn't come down early, but because you're actually never playing cards early, and of course your whole board's hexproof, you just never have to worry about your opponent like doing something like a dodging your board or like blinking something around or like using generalized early play hate. You're just completely immune to that, which is, you know, those are tech cards in like pretty much every normal deck. So the fact that you just get to hand wave it and say, nope, doesn't affect me, is really powerful. And then of course the raw selection and ripping cards out of your active deck, as well as on the first turn you play this, it goes like neutral, replaces itself in hand, replaces itself with stock, and then every turn after it is like super gravy heavy. If you get 2 turns off of this at 2, you are rolling, and you will be able to pick your opponent apart at the top however you want.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think it's important to mention, I mean, we talked about this a lot in depth in the set review, Blue for Slime. If you want to like hear our really detailed, like long tangent back and forth on it, go check that out. But I know I was not a believer in this card at first, and like at first glance, I was just comparing it to the Alice, and I kind of thought this card sucked because you can't hit it off Brainstorm, so what's so powerful about it? So I don't know, maybe is there anything you think you could touch on here real quick just to give like a
it's
TLDR on that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a different kind of deck because you don't have to dedicate your entire front half of your deck to resolving this card. And this card is just a package that is put in your deck like a package of any other cards. Where unlike Alice is like legitimately, let's be honest here, it's like 24 slots to put Alice in your deck or something ridiculous like that. It's probably more. You have to have so many cards dedicated to ensuring that you always resolve Alice on your first level 1 turn, or like, you know, hopefully while you're at level 1 to get full benefit out of it, because, you know, Alice isn't half as good if your whole deck isn't upside down when you play her. Your whole deck is your deck when you play Murin. So you can kind of just slam Murin down and go. And because she's big, because you have the hex proof, because she's not played early, you can kind of just like run her in with like reckless abandon, provided that like, you know, your opponent's power threshold and they're not going to back up over you. So you have a lot more room in your deck to play cards that kind of leverage that selectivity, where with Alice you like have a ton of cards in your deck that are dedicated to resolving Alice, and then just, you know, the other cards you have to play, like a finisher and like a stock swap and a this and a that, and it, like you gotta have all these count to protect your Alices, because sometimes you go down to a 3-card hand when you play your Alice. You just play this like it's a normal combo. You play it down and you have a full hand at the end of your turn every single time, no matter how the game's been going, provided you resolve your Murin. So it's a lot less impact to put in your deck and to play it. So because of that, you get to leverage the selection a lot more, even though it comes down a little late compared to Alice. Although Alice existing does make it a little rough for this card. It is one of your rougher matchups. For however much I, am talking about Gobta being the answer, a smart Alice opponent still makes that matchup, it's still 55-45 Alice favored, especially with the Leafa. The Leafa makes it so you can never win, and things start to slip away. So it's still one of your harder matchups, but it's very, very winnable with a 1-card tech, which is the story of most of Slime's matchups, actually. They're very winnable due to 1 or 2 cards that you have the space to put in, because the package is a lot leaner than it seems. So protecting Murin, we have 3 counters here. Most lists that you'll see, including this one here, have 3 counters. There's a lot of different options, but the ones that I play are the anti-change counter, the set 1/1, the memory kick counter from set 2, the Benimaru, and I play the Geld counter. The Geld counter has a couple uses against decks that can do things like Sora, where they pay 1, save it, and the card gets really big, or they have things like that, like on the crackback over a 2-turn cycle, or more importantly in the mirror, or against Alice that's just trying to spread itself thin across multiple lanes to kind of like answer 2 Murins by like being 500 over every lane, or like something weird like that. This card is like 3 stock all your Murins on tap, and then you slam pants and go again, because you can pay 1, pick it back up, play it again, do that over and over. Another secret benefit of this card, because you are ripping so many cards out of your active deck, you're going to trigger a ton of pants. And wouldn't it be cool if on your first lane where your opponent challenged you, you could pay 2 on that attack and pay out both 2 pants you just triggered? At least 2 of the 3 that you triple trigger. That's the real secret reason I play the pig counter, is that it just lets you pay 2 immediately and get another backup back to play on another turn, as well as just being good in the mirror.
Yeah, I like the Geld a lot here. I'm usually not a fan of like that sort of like beatable backup, compared to having like a free effect of like, I don't know, scrying a card, anti-change, anti-damage, whatever. But when the name of the game in like winning the matchups where you want this card is, who gets to untap with more Murons, who gets to have more Alices, like everything that's good nowadays seems like, they're playing a bunch of big stuff down at level 2, whether it's conventionally like Alice Boss and Slime, or by like early playing like 3/2s, you know, like anything Hololive's doing, Overlord. It's funny I say conventionally. Playing 2/1s is like not conventional. Early playing stuff and cheating and in's conventional. But
Yep.
my point being, you know, every deck that's winning now is putting down a God field at level 2, you know, tri-fielding like whatever like top end sort of thing they're going into. And when that happens, like having a single card you can grab that can protect all 3 of your lanes and let you untap with yours while theirs die, that forces them in awkward positions where shit, they need to like side attack all their lanes now if they want to like be able to untap and then protect their 2/1s and 3/2s with counters. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. The fact that it can just win you the whole board off one card at the cost of your stock that you're charging up anyway, you'll come out ahead. I just like being able to play out the 2 trigger climaxes. That saved my ass multiple times, being able to pay down 2 on the first attack, especially in like small deck states, because like all things in Modern Weiss, you're like forced to gamble on small deck states a lot of the time, where you just have to be like, okay, well, I really hope I don't trigger 3 times even though I shouldn't, and then you triggered 3 times anyway. And a card like that, just being able to pay like that and you still get good effect out of it, is really good. The other card people play in this slot is that one that just gives +6 soul. That's good for getting pants out of your hand, but I really never ever needed that card, and every time I play that card when I'm 10-2 and I play it on the 2 soul swing, I eat 8 because I'm bad. So I would rather prefer this to help me pay out triggered climaxes and win the whole board. Getting into the finishing package, this is the most important part of it, is this 2-card Dragonoid Milim package. Dragonoid Milim is an old card. It's on play, reveal top. As long as that card is a character, you burn 1. When your other characters attack, this gets 1,000 power. So if it swings in last, it'd be a 11/5 base. And then it has on reverse, pay 3 clock kick. So this card does like 2 chips on its own. The ping, obviously, and then the clock kick. Then you pair it with this card. This card is on play, top 2 rearrange. Really important with the Dragonoid Milim to make sure that you hit, especially because you're so disgustingly compressed a lot of the time that like you will have times where you can whiff, and you should play this. You have to play it to make sure you'll hit. When you play the Dragonoid Milim to the stage, you can send this card to stock and give that Dragonoid Milim an extra 1,500 power. That keeps her power line like relevant enough to make sure that you beat over the like 1 card you're trying to beat over for that clock kick. So that's really important. Then of course this card also bonds to the Dragonoid Milim. So what you can do with all your stock and all your resources, and not only this Onwards to Paradise Rimuru, but also the Veldora that we saw earlier, or the Rimuru Tempest from the TD, where you can discard an extra climax to salvage, is you can really loop this Dragonoid Milim multiple times. Because you are pinging in main phase, because you get to look at the top 2 cards of your deck, which is very important for, again, not only hitting the Milim ping, but also your Benimaru burns, because your Benimaru burns for the level of the card you see on top +1. What you can do with that, because you are pinging in main phase, is this is how you are going to set up checkmates. So this is something that's like super underrated in Weiss, and literally always has been, because the much more flashy thing is to just slam 3 of the dumbest combo that you can possibly play and just go, my percentages are higher. But you can make your percentages really high by doing stuff like this Milim in main phase, and then setting up the like perfect swings, like the perfect lethal, like the most amounts of perfect lethal that you can, because you have so much information and you're kind of chipping your opponent down. And you can reasonably like put both of these Milims on the board, maybe threaten 2 clock kicks, probably get 3 pings and resolve a Benimaru or something like that, and still get your clock kick because the Murin builds so many resources. And it's really, really effective. You just have to have like good knowledge of your opponent's deck state, what they can do, their outs, what your best numbers are, using that top tip rearrange to set up your Benimaru burns, combining this with maybe a big swing like the Shion that kind of like has 3 instances to deal at least 1 damage, things like that. Where you can kind of pick your opponent apart at the top. And this package is the main reason why. This is like the actual finishing package in Slime. The Benimaru is like the second fiddle to the Dragonoid Milim and the Rimuru here. This little 3-card package is actually what's winning you games with chip and precision.
Seems pretty effective. And just looking at it now, like just as you're talking, I'm just like, you know, crunching some numbers, figuring it out. You can actually get you can play triple Dragonoid Milim in a turn. You play Milim, Milam.
Yep.
If you have all three of these in your hand, you can play Milam, play a second Milam, overplay one of the Milams with this Rimuru, and since it's a bond from Waiting Room, you can grab back the card you just overplayed, replay it, get another ping.
A lot of the time it's only 2 because you want to play the Rimuru first because you're so compressed you don't want to whiff. But that's why I have another Surveil in the deck as well. If you're like really rolling, you can use the Climax swap to Surveil first and then go for the whole thing and get 3 pings. But it's really dependent on what's going to end the game best. You are fairly aggressive. You are playing 8 pants. You are slamming all game. The times your opponent like locks themselves up to 3 and then like you live their finisher and you go for it are like barely low. Your opponent usually, like, unless they're playing a healing finisher, they're going to be at like 3-1, 3-2. Just because you're slamming all game and like you have these giant things on board, you get extra soul from that too. So you push a lot more, which makes the chip and precision finish better. But even when I've had games where I have to kill people from 3-0. This is the main way that you're doing it, is because you get to see what Milam pings come out first. Oh, my opponent like canceled on 1 twice. Now they're down 2 climaxes. Now I pay the Shion to burn 4 instead of playing down the Benimaru and rolling the dice because there's 2 level 0s on top of my deck. Lines like that are really powerful. And again, consistently underrated, but will always be powerful. So rounding out the finishing lineup and our other level 3s. Benimaru I just talked about. He's primarily a healer. And then when we have all 3 colors in level, that is blue, red, and yellow, you pay 1, ditch a character, reveal top, and then you burn X plus 1. So better Yo burned, also a healer. Very strong on its own. And again, we have that top 2 rearrange of the Rimuru. I've had a lot of games ended by, you see like a 2 and a 1 on top. Those are some really juicy numbers. Just do 1 Dragon on Milam, send it to stock. Do 2 Benimarus, 1 clock kick. Pretty powerful finishing line. Shuna early play, just because it's like completely like just free 4 or more early play. Who cares? Sits at exactly the same power lines as your Murin for a turn cycle, and it heals. Healing at 2 is one of your only ways to like hedge your bets against ultra finishers, stuff like Itsuki, stuff like Gura. So you play a healer specifically for those matchups when you or you think you're gonna cancel at 2. You're pretty sure your opponent's gonna go to 3 first and just try to 360 no scope you. Your only real way to hedge your bets against that is to heal, which is why we play 2 of the Shuna. I have had games where healing 2 did matter, playing a Shuna down, then playing over the Shuna, then resolving only 2 Murins for the turn, ripping 2 cards out of the deck, healing down 2. And I've won those games because specifically I've healed twice. You'll be happy to be playing 2. And then Shion is the big chunk of damage in our off finisher lineup. So she has on attack, you pay 2, ditch 2, dump the rest of your stock. You really only want to have 2 when you resolve this, to burn 4. And then she has on the turn she's played, cancel burn 1, so that can trip off either the burn or her swing. So this is like 3 chances to deal 1 is the like low end way you can look at it. Or this is like my decompressed opponent like shot me to 3 early and this is my best card to push. You just slam this card down alongside some Benimarus, dump all your resources, and you can just go for it. But this is like your big chunk of damage that you can throw out. And I don't think I'd ever get rid of this card after playing, how many rounds has it been? It's like I played like 18 rounds across 2 tournaments. For BCS, I'd never get rid of this. This card is like unbelievably clutch.
Yeah, it seems like, I love that as like a teched off finisher card, and you have just enough yellow, to support it, with the 4 level 0.
Yeah, it's like
Hakaros.
8 yellow, yeah.
Yeah, so you have like just enough to like make that feel comfortable. And after seeing the whole thing all laid out like this, I can tell why you like the deck so much, and kind of why I'm coming around on it too. It just seems like a modern incarnation of Bara Sao.
Sort of, yeah. It's got all the toolboxness of it, yeah.
Yeah, you have the toolbox, you have like all the really good selection, and then even though you're foregoing like a typical finisher package, you just have a whole suite of different off finishers that can pair together in very unique ways to give you the perfect finish that you need.
Yep, that's the kicker for me. It's also just like, again, it's extremely consistent, extremely stable. Lots of rounds, more so now than ever. 192 players at Rosemont, 141 players at Toronto.
That's crazy. That's really good. I'm really pumped to hear that.
8 round events are going to become the norm. So like the longer tournaments get, the better pick things like this get. And I'm going to briefly go over some like alternative options, things you've seen pop up in other decks. So instead of playing the Hakuro and the Shuna, talked about the benefits of those, you could play the Milam and the Riki. It's overall a slower 0, but it ensures that you get more Shizu combos off. There are benefits and drawbacks to both. both, but I prefer the Hakuro and the Shuna. You can play this Ramorous. This Ramorous is one of your only real ways to like stun / drag up a standby Gura. They're not gonna win all 3 lanes with standby Gura against you, because they just let Gura just let you do whatever you want. So you're gonna have your perfect Mirren board. You can play this down, drag up a standby Gura, kill it. I didn't find that line to be very good. You can accomplish a similar thing with anti-change counter by just having anti-change counter, because Gura really does want to attack. Them siding is like pretty bad. If they're them siding a level 2, they're gonna deal no damage, and they're really just trying to like push you as far as possible before they try to flip the whole table. So I ended up cutting this just to keep the anti-change counter, because against the kind of opponent that just wasn't gonna care and was just gonna swing at me for damage, the anti-change counter was like just as good as this, and this card is still like a hand flex, and I wanted to squeeze other cards in. Again, the Ramorous +6 sold. You either cancel or eat 8. You know, if you're lucky enough to play this card. It also depends, like, how much are you flooding? Like, do you think that you flood to hand more? This card helps you discard in hand. I personally, and watching many other players play the deck, you trigger more in my experience, which is why I like the pig counter instead. Some people still tech the old Shizu. Because I'm not playing the Ricky and I don't resolve multiple Shizu combo very often, and you know, sometimes Shizu just reveals a climax doesn't hit. I don't play this at all, just because the Shuna is pretty free, but I don't think splitting them 1-1 if you are playing the Ricky and you like always resolve 2+ Shizu at 1, it's that bad of an idea. You can like cut all the off finishers to play the memory package and just stare your opponent in the face and say that you'll cancel. Kevin did this in Toronto. It works out really well when you just like never trigger and you just like have a billion memory and you have the Mirrons and you just like never take any damage, and it feels really good. But I think overall the teched out off finisher package is much better. I've had like arguments with people about that, but I'm just really not a fan of the memory stuff after like playing it and seeing it be played. Not my preference for the deck. And again, this is like all personal preference stuff. Some people splash a finisher. They rely on like having like 6 or 7 pants, and then like maybe this 3/2 Soe, which is like pay 1, pick up a climax. Again, you have a lot of stock from Urine, but that's not a big deal to then go into your combo. One of them did really well with splashing the old book combo as just a one of in Chicago. I watched that list be played. I do not know the pilot, but they seemed like they were having a great time piloting that. They also ran a pretty thick memory lineup to support that Shizu, which was pretty cool. It was a pretty neat take on the memory line. It rectifies the problem of not playing the off finishers by just playing a finisher. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then there are absolute mad lads that just don't play a level 1 combo. They just slam 4 of the Bonder and like play exactly like Konatamarian with the Clock Encore. I tried that. I don't like that. It is really funny. You can like just play like a 2 soul or something insane, and just like push, be like unga bunga damage in the early game because Mirren's so dumb, and just sit on these. But I was not a fan personally. So these are all a bunch of personal preference and additional text. So
yeah, I got like a
yeah.
Well, I have a couple things I want to say there too. Just give my thoughts on this whole slide here. There's a lot going on. I think regarding the 2-1 counter, like the cancel or eat 8, it's your call. I think it's like a meta dependent thing, and I think right now I think you made the right call by maybe not running this one. Although I am like very much a fan of like that sort of card. Just is like a card to like clutch on and sit on and say I'm not going to take damage in this lane. But like when all the finishers right now, like the big finishers, I mean, if you're looking at this slime deck, you have a lot of pings. Gura's obviously a lot of like smaller chunks of damage. Overlord has a lot of instances of burn 1, right?
Yep.
I believe Quince does as well. So I mean, like everything is like doing a lot of instances of small damage, which is not like necessarily where this like pump their soul and like just take the hit card is particularly strong. This one's more of a question, but looking at the 2 big level 0 packages, like either the more I guess traditional Milam and Rimuru, like Ricky center runner level 0, as opposed to the Hakuro and Shuna you're running. Can you kind of like mix and match those? Like instead of going 4 and 4, could you like kind of like do some splits of that? Do you think that could kind of work?
You probably could, yeah. You could probably get like really weird with it and like shave off one of the TD Rimurus and like probably find a split that works, honestly.
Yeah, because to me it didn't really seem like an all or nothing sort of thing. It seems like you're going kind of all in on the Hakuro and Shuna package because it's, you know, what you think is most appropriate at the moment. But I mean, all 4 of those are good cards, and you could seems like you could kind of use them in, combination with each other however you want.
Yeah, you probably could. You could probably go like maybe like I don't know if I'd play any less than 4 of the Shuna. I think that's like Shuna or Milam, but I'd probably go like maybe 4 Shuna, like 3 Hakro, 2 Ricky, and like cut a DD Rimuru if I wanted to play the Ricky, just to like ensure that I get more level 1 combos off. But because I wasn't really caring about playing the level 1 combo, that's why I didn't play the Ricky. That was like my whole thought process there. So I was like, oh, Hakro dunking stuff's really good. So just kept it on 4 Hakro. So I wanted to talk briefly. I'll just put this slide up here while I talk about it because it's got a lot of text. People can like read it while I'm talking. General BCS experience. It's always a great time. Love going out and seeing people. It's the main reason myself and a lot of other people go to these. Go out and see friends, see all the people you met through the community. And that part was great. Love going to Toronto. Love going to Chicago. Love seeing all the people there. Love all y'all that we met. And there's a lot of people who I saw. A lot of other people who I've seen who like are tournament grinders, go to a bunch of BCSs. People who I saw at Toronto and saw at Chicago and went to both events who were playing Slime. And Slime, I've been starting to hear, kind of heard it in Chicago, kind of saw it on Global, on the Discords, people saying like, oh, Slime has this high conversion rate. Slime's gonna get hit. These other decks are gonna get hit. Number one, Toronto, I was lucky enough to have a buy card. I walked around, counted out 144 people because I counted out that many number of tables. So pretty accurate, 141. Walked around looking at, what people were playing. The room was over like 50% Gura Alice. It was everywhere. Chicago, I didn't have the ability to walk around, but let me tell you, walking around, it is still Gura Alice. Gura and Alice, like Hololive and Sao, are still like what you are going to see out in Swiss all the time. Like if people were like thinking that it's a lot of slime in Swiss, it's really not. Like even in Chicago, where there were more slimes than I think I would have ever expected to see, it was still like 2 or 3 hands worth of slimes. Not nowhere near the amount of Alice, nowhere near the amount of Hololive. It is still a low representation, probably high conversion deck. And let's talk about why maybe a lot of people, myself included, are deciding to play slime instead of something that's like so obviously unbelievably strong, like Alice, like Gura, things like that. Number one, there's a couple here, gonna run through them, have them up on the screen. You've had a chance to read them. Access to level 0 stock swap. Alice and Gura both sit on a fuck ton of stock. Having the only meta relevant deck with a level 0 stock swap is extremely powerful, because I don't think a lot of people are playing for G-Man or Kaguya right now. Level 0 stock swap means you can fire it off at any time, even if your Alice opponent is sitting at 1 and they're just like super sacking you and they have like 12 stock and they like slip up and leave a stock swappable deck state. You can just 360 no scope to kill them. It's something your opponent always has to play around. It always has to be in the back of their head, and you have so much access that you can just rip that card out of nowhere. You can actually have that card go back. Your opponent purposely does not play around them, and then you can just rip it because you have such good access. They actually have to play around it just all the time, no matter where it is, which is really powerful for slime. Because you have so much flex in the deck, because you operate pretty well on pretty thin counts of core cards, you can shove in a lot of tech, really powerful. Slime, mentioned this earlier, it's a good middle ground between a really heavy board-based strategy and the kind of like slam and go 1k1 style of play. You kind of get to do both because you don't have to invest a lot into doing either. You just the hardest thing you have to do is sculpt for your Murons, but sculpting in the modern game with the kind of crazy cards they hand you, like that 1-0 that just rips Muron out of your deck, is basically a non-issue, provided you're playing ahead enough. And the other thing is, like, slime has always been fairly untargetable. It is really hard to like hate on slime outside of like pecking in cost bombs to like bomb Shizu. That's like the most mean thing you could do to slime, and in this deck it doesn't even matter. So 0 to 1, pretty non-interactive. You get to play 24-25 soul triggers because of 8 pants. So even when you're not slamming, you got a pretty good chance of pushing damage, which is always really nice. It's not anything crazy like Gura, but having the naturally high soul trigger count is always good, especially when we're still a 1k1 deck. I'm completely immune to early play board breaks like anti-change counter or Adachi, because not only are we hexproof, we don't play cards early, we play 2-1s from hand. Immune to late game defensive counters because of full board hexproof, can't get tapped, can't get money countered, can't get bounced. Just put it on the board and you're immune. Feels great. And then compression via searches is going to be strong no matter what. Like Zekken Yuki is always going to be strong. This is just Zekken Yuki when you slam Climax, so always going to be good. And then your matchups with the higher tier decks, stuff like Gura, Alice, they're like good enough. They're good enough for, you know, players of equal skill to have a hopefully balanced game, provided like there aren't like landslide cancels on one or the other side, things like that. You get to play an actual matchup where your decisions will matter against those decks more so than other matchups where you're just kind of like going all in and hoping that you get there. You're also immune to a single Eins board break. If they only have one Eins on the board and that Eins has all the markers, they cannot blow up your entire board. They can only target the 2/1 Shuna because of timing. They have to choose all the targets simultaneously. They can only choose the Shuna, so only the Shuna goes to grave. And then again, talked about this a lot, chip and precision finishing package are consistently underrated by players of like all skill levels in this game, because the shiny, flashy stuff like Gura is just far more compelling to like say that you have a raw 80% chance to win versus like, oh, well, like these 2 pings stuck, so now I have a 80% chance to win that you did in main phase. It's definitely not as flashy and definitely a lot harder. So those are all the logical, like hard facts reasons that maybe you want to play Slime. But here's my vibes and feels. And, you know, I don't know how you feel about vibes and feels for Dex choice, Andy, but I think they're pretty important, especially in White Schwartz. I think there's a lot of vibes and feels going around. So
I'm definitely like a very feels-based player.
So Slime number
Very
one,
vibes and feels, yeah.
Compared to something like Alice, I think you can have a similar experience with Alice if you're playing the mirror, but not when you're playing other matchups. Compared to stuff like Alice or Gura overall, I think Slime is very rewarding to play. The toolbox aspect of it makes you feel like, even though like the toolboxing is kind of handed to you because Murin's insane, it still makes you feel like your decisions matter a lot more. And you know, they do. They actually do. The fact that you're ripping the perfect card, you grab the silver bullet at the right time, means that you're rewarded for good piloting, and the deck feels great to play. The base level game plan of the deck is extremely simple. We put our cards down at level 0, play our cards at level 1, play our cards at level 2, chip out the game at 3. Level 3 is the most like involved level, and level 3 is like always the most involved thinky level because you gotta like find your way to the win. Kind of like how any White Schwartz game goes, you like always have to do like a ton of thinking at the top. The level 3 games, the turns are usually the longest for that reason. But having a base level simple game plan does save your mental over the course of the long events. We talked about how these events are pretty much always 8 rounds in North America now, and are probably eventually going to get to 9 rounds in a day in Swiss, and then it's top 8. That's a lot of game, and anything you can do to save your mental over the course of a long event is very good. Another thing is that Slime is very likely to dodge the ban list. Even though people are memeing about conversion and be like, oh my god, Slime's gonna get hit, and these other decks are gonna run free. I really don't think it is. Bushi C, for better or worse, does usually take a lot of inspiration from the Japanese meta, and honestly I think that doing that for our current meta state is the right call. I think pretty much almost the exact ban list, or like exactly what that ban list targeted, should be what the English ban list eventually gets, but we're pretty far away off from that. But you know, Slime is pretty likely to dodge based on that, so it's a good investment for competitive grinders, people who attend multiple events, people who are insane like me who attend multiple BCSs. It's a good investment for players like that, where you have like a very strong deck that is like pretty much guaranteed to not get banned, and you get to invest not only your money into buying the deck and not having it banned, but you also get to invest your time. You get to become an expert with the deck, and then your deck doesn't get banned. You just get to like adapt it, slightly tweak it for a new meta, which is always very rewarding. And then the deck is actually just fun to play, even when you sit across from these decks that are like complete frustrating nightmares. Like, I hate sitting across from Alice, I hate sitting across from Gura, I hate sitting across from Overlord, but playing Slime, because the deck is like good enough to have decent matchups against those decks, and just a good enough, involved enough deck to pilot like at the outset, it's like actually enjoyable to sit down and play, even in this hell meta and it's not just me. I talked to a ton of other players, ton of other content creators, ton of other people over the course of just these 2 regionals, and everyone has the exact same response, except for people like Riaz, because they're nuts and they can just have passion all the time. They're so inspiring. Riaz is like the reason I like dragged myself back out to Chicago, because we were talking about Slime, because he's also a Slime believer for this season. So like other than people like him who just have this raw passion for the game that can't be shook, a lot of people are pretty frustrated with the current meta environment, and having a deck like Slime, thank god, fun to play, and it's fun enough to play into these hell matchups, is really nice. So that's my vibes and feels.
Again, it seems like very much my type of deck, like after, really sitting down and hearing your whole like rant on it. Very, very Jundy. Very
Yes, it is very Jundy.
Very fair. A deck that's like easy to pick up but hard to master. Something that really, it feels like a lot like Jund to me, like from Magic the Gathering. Like you go into a tournament, you don't really have any like big blowout matchups where you're like blowing them out winning, but you're not really hard losing every matchup. It's a deck where you can sit down and every single time, every single match you play, there's going to be a back and forth, you're because of like the fact that you're not like as all in on these like combo-y, like how should I say, strategies that are maybe
very all in strategies.
Very all in. Yeah. I mean, you're insulated against those worst case scenarios where like you just have a non-game where like, well, no matter what I did, like I opened all my climaxes, I opened, never saw my triple Gura combo, I never, whatever, those worst case scenarios don't really plague this deck as much, because you have the 2+ combos, because you're not reliant on any specific finisher. You have because of your pretty even matchup spread. Definitely see where you're coming from, saying it's a very feels good deck, a very rewarding deck for someone who, like, you're obviously someone who cares a lot about the game, Carmen. And again, you're saying you talk to a lot of other like top players and stuff, and it's like I can totally see that where, maybe if your entire goal was I want to go and win at all costs, you maybe play like Gura. But when you really want to have like a good experience, like playing over the course of the day, where your tech decisions matter, and again, the consistency in a lot of rounds too of just playing a very versatile, like well-rounded deck, and it's definitely a deck where you can flex your skill on your opponent a lot more too. So Slime seems like a good choice for like masters of the game, I guess I'd say. Maybe like something where,
yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah,
like I don't know how to like put it. It's just something where it's like you don't have to worry about just getting sacked and losing a game because the deck is insulated against that because of all its redundancies. It's good.
No more than normal White Schwartz. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even compared to any other deck, this seems like one of the more insulated ones, I'd say, against just randomly getting sacked and losing.
Yep.
But again, there's like so many different lines you can take with the finishers, like mixing and matching your finishers with this deck, as well as like again, if you're a skilled player and you really know the matchups, you know the power lines that you need to have like your Murons or your other things sit at. It's a deck that definitely rewards you for that and rewards strong fundamentals of the game too. Strong like inherent understanding of how compression works, how to punish your opponent's poor compression or like a single bad turn, with things like your stock swap. Definitely a deck where you can leverage your skill, I'd say. I don't know, I feel like I'm getting pretty ranty about it. Not really.
No, I get exactly what you mean. That is like basically that's like basically my big thing with it. It is a deck that lets you leverage your decisions against your opponent as opposed to just leveraging the cards you put in your deck.
Like I guess maybe a way to put it is just like you have something that's like you take like a typical Ozki Gura player and a master Ozki Gura player, right? And there's probably not that much difference between like their performance.
Yeah, there's a lot of decks in the meta right now where pilot input is lessened, is what I'll leave it at, to be very nice about it. I believe pilot skill is lessened. Not to disparage anyone who brought like a Gura list or something like that to a tournament. It's like saying that when you're playing a deck like that with a kind of finisher, provided that both players can get to the point where they execute said finisher, because the finisher is so powerful, what was the difference between swinging in with triple Gura when your opponent was at 2-4 as opposed to your Gura opponent being at 2-3, where it was maybe a better pilot who like chipped out a little bit more or something like that, or had a slightly more board state or something like that.
It's definitely not a shot against anyone. It's very much like very much a vibes and feels sort of thing.
Yeah, it is a vibes and feels.
There's a lot of skill that goes into like anything, and there's pros and cons to playing those decks too. There's pros and cons to playing any deck. But I mean, that was just basically my thoughts on it. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to touch on too that you mentioned, about like really putting in the time and skill with a deck and getting good with. I think that's definitely valuable for Slime. You have people who have been playing Slime for a very long time, since like the very beginning. So all your fundamentals you have with the set, you could pick up this deck and all that previous work you've put in will help you be a better player with it. But also the fact that I don't think it would really see a ban. At least nothing at this point really makes me think Slime slime would be
I think it's
on
too
the
fair.
chopping block to get a ban.
I think it's way too fair for the
partly
like,
one. It's too fair, yeah. Like, even comparing to Alice, the fact that it comes down like at level 2 compared to level 1 makes it inherently fair. And even if you're just looking at results up to this point, again, we only have 3 tournaments in like the Springfest cycle where slime has been like new slime has been legal to look at, and it's not. I would not say it's overrepresented. And even in the one tournament where it has a lot of top 8 placings, which would be Rosemont, which is the most recent one, all 3 of the slime lists were different. It looks like
3 there, and then myself and the player who won Toronto, our lists were actually very similar. We were like 2 cards off. We deck checked next to each other, and our lists were like exactly the same. But the lists in Rosemont, like you said, are very different. All 3 of them. Slime did win both, though. Did catch that first.
Perhaps, but I still don't think it's
one of them's Clinton.
Like,
he always wins.
Alarm.
He could be playing 32. He could be playing 42 level zeros, 8-2 souls. He'd win Chicago. He's got that home field advantage. He's won there so many times. I think it's 4 times Clinton's won in Chicago. He's not. He's also the homie. Love that.
I don't know. Maybe that's the real play, but I mean, I don't think there's any reason to be worried about slime like eating a ban like at this point. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see what people choose to play like going forward in the season.
Yep. Especially with Overlord not being on this top 8. See how it goes.
That's true. Overlord was only legal for the
one event, yeah.
For the one tournament, and it didn't see any tops there either.
Nope, I don't think as
many. Surprised to see.
There were definitely some good players in the room on the deck. I know they had some like the one that I played against, and the one like Tyler Weave Shorts who was playing it had some like unfortunate runs of luck, but they were like playing at top tables, so it was around. It just wasn't as represented, but we shall see. All right, well, in the close here, this has been a long one. Pretty much figured it would be. It's a lot of things to talk about. Upcoming content, we got more set reviews we got to do. I kind of want to do Ari Ferretta next because I like that set, but there are a lot of we have to touch on. We'll get caught up eventually, but it's impossible. There's Chainsaw Man, Ari Ferretta, a Spy Family we have to do, and they're probably going to announce more stuff soon, so we probably get on that eventually. But again, like I said, might have videos coming out every other week just for a while here. Early to mid-October and end of September are absolutely nuts for us. WGP actually just got announced, so maybe we'll have some JP stuff on the channel. Gonna have regionals for that, and hopefully it's in-person Nats this year. Drag some Pittsburgh locals to Hammer Girl. Always a fun time. Should be hilarious. But anything else in the closing? Any closing thoughts?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think a lot of these newer sets like that, are going to be coming out, like that you mentioned. I think Chainsaw Man in particular, that could be a real shake-up to the meta. I don't feel bad talking about this now that the video's already gone on for so long. But I feel like Chainsaw Man could be like a huge shake-up.
Chainsaw Man's nuts.
Yeah, from what I've seen of it, it seems pretty nuts. The level 1 combo that like specifically deals with like level 2s seems also pretty good. Is that the yellow one?
Yeah, the power. The power combo, yeah.
That like specifically punishes like 2-1 strategies like Slime, like Alice. I'm very interested to see how that deck like plays with everything. And I guess even just looking at some of these tournament results, I think there's definitely some sets I want to see what people can do with. Like in the first tournament there in Toronto, there was an Avatar that got 2nd place. That's a set that seems like it has a lot of potential to me, and I'm very interested to see if throughout the season if it can get any more tops.
I don't think anyone's as blessed as Toronto Steve, though. I don't think they have the raw power. Let me tell you, this man, I don't even want to know how many zeros on the play, like into the 0 percentages that this man hit on me to steal the game. But it was I don't want to do the math. Nico said never do the math. I'm gonna follow his advice. All right, and I think with that, Pittsburgh White Schwartz signing off. We will see you all in the next one.